Welcome to the Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast, bringing you the country's top podcast on the subject of internet marketing. Folks, thanks for joining us for the Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Glenn Thayer, and with me is Thomas Young, the CEO of Intuitive Websites. We're going to talk about some of the web marketing trends for 2011, what's hot, what's not, what is no longer being used, and all those good things. So, Tom, I guess let's start at the top, because I think there's 4 key trends that we're really looking at for 2011.
Yeah, what we did for the podcast today is try to narrow it down to 4 real important trends. There's lots of trends, obviously, with e-commerce and internet marketing and lots of things. But these 4 we think are real important and apply to most of the folks that listen to these podcasts, which are small business owners and medium-sized business owners and managers. So I'll go over the 4 trends first, and then we'll dive into each one of them. The first one is continued growth in e-commerce. And in fact, we could see explosive growth in e-commerce over the next couple years. The second one is the decline of Google, and I'll talk a little bit more about what I mean by that. but it's the changes happening in Google and the changes happening in search. And then number 3 is the growth in email and text messaging as a marketing resource for business. There's still a lot of room for growth there, and I think we're going to see more of that. And then finally, the growth and development of an actual effective mobile internet. And the mobile internet's been around for a while, and there's been a lot of hype about it, but now we finally have an effective mobile internet, mostly due to the iPad and the iPhone and things like that. So let's jump in and talk about these.
Let's talk about e-commerce, because obviously, clearly, we've seen significant growth year by year in e-commerce. What are some trends that you're seeing?
Well, what's the number one growth factor for e-commerce now is going to be based on demographics. And the fact that more and more people are, even older folks and younger folks who have purchasing power, are all going to go to e-commerce more and more to purchase things. And just the idea that it is much more safe and reliable and secure for people, that also causes the increase. And when you look at e-commerce sales being such a tiny part of retail sales, there's a ton of room for growth there. The other part of it is that the specialization of websites, where you can get a website devoted to, we heard one the other day, which was devoted to inflatable plastic houses for kids.
Oh, like the bounce houses?
The bounce houses.
Okay.
And it's an entire website just for that one little niche. And so when you get into the idea that websites can have these incredibly focused niches, and then the increased demographics, we're going to continue to see more and more growth in e-commerce. And I think that with all the technology and all the things that we gather in our life, all of those things need accessories and need replacement parts and need things that need to be fixed or replaced when they're broken. There's explosive growth in that coming as well. Whether you need a new adapter for something or a new power cord for something, or whether your kid's inflatable house just had the pump break and you got to go find a pump so you can. I mean, so it's just endless, and that is what the internet is going to be so good at doing. And so you combine those 2 things, demographics and the extreme power of niche marketing. I think we're going to see a lot of continued growth in e-commerce.
Well, there's another thing on e-commerce, too, because the biggest challenge that comes up is like, well, what about for items that you really need to be there in person? Prime example, test driving a car. Yeah. If you want to test drive a car, if you want to go and physically see a house and see, do I want to live here or not? What I'm seeing on the other end is the internet's being used to actually find all the details to narrow your search down.
Yes.
Then so instead of going in and test driving a car, I remember buying a car 15 years ago and visiting 15 different dealerships.
Yeah.
And now I narrow my search down, and if I see 2 different dealerships, I mean that's a lot.
Right.
So
yeah.
I already know what I've done because I've narrowed it down online, and I'm seeing that is going a lot in e-commerce, especially specialty niche items. You can go in, find out all the information that you need to then make an informed decision. Which you may go, okay, I've narrowed it down to these 3 items. Let me see these in person.
Right, and I think that many of our clients and many of the folks who listen to this podcast, you have these niche items. You either sell them as a service or a product, and they need to be on a website and sold via e-commerce if possible.
Now, you mentioned Google, and this is probably going to ruffle a lot of feathers all over the place, and the decline of Google is as a search resource and it being replaced by other types of search. So tell us about that.
Well, here's a prediction. I mean, we're looking at trends for this year and beyond. I think, Google has done a fabulous job with search, and they've been around for working on 10 years now, roughly, and they've dabbled in a lot of different things. And you can just see that the business strategy for Google was, okay, we've got search, we've got pay-per-click as a revenue model, so we can make money doing this, and now let's dabble in these other things. They've been very, very successful, but they're going to have to push themselves because there's a lot of ways people can search now. And with the advent of Facebook, which is actually a more popular website than Google, and the mobile devices and the texting and email and conversations with friends, there's just so many other ways now, and it's so easy to get access to information that Google has got to watch what they're doing. And then there's another part of this, which is with pay-per-click. So pay-per-click is a great tool, a great marketing tool, and all companies should do this. Of course, we're big proponents of it. But the problem is most people, the vast majority of people, probably 90%, don't know how to use pay-per-click. And I think if we did surveys of companies that in the last 10 years tried pay-per-click and felt like they didn't get good results, I think you might see 30-40% of the people saying that. So that doesn't work. It's not sustainable. You can't have, probably in this case, millions of companies experimenting with pay-per-click, having it fail, and not going anywhere. And the reason that it usually fails is they don't have the knowledge or the expertise to make it work. And they also don't necessarily want to go outside their business to find that knowledge, or they don't want to set aside budget. So it's a whole gamut of reasons why. So combined with those two things, the lack of talent and skills on how to use pay-per-click, and the idea that people can go anywhere to get information now, Facebook and social networking and LinkedIn and email friends, and Google is going to have to look at what they're doing and make sure that they stay innovative and stay creative, and if they want to stay a major player on the internet and continue to be. And I think they will through 2011. But, I remember the days of Alta Vista. Alta Vista used to be the world's most popular search engine. And Yahoo used to be an incredibly popular search engine, more popular than Google at one time. But all that's faded because of this idea of, we're not only going to do search, we're going to do all these other strategies, and those strategies didn't work out too well.
Now, are we seeing a decline in pay-per-click then? Are we seeing more of a decline on pay-per-click with an increase in people focusing on organic search results?
Well, I don't know if we're seeing an increase or decline in pay-per-click. I don't think Google releases that information. If they do, I'd be surprised. I haven't seen it in anything I monitor.
But it's almost as people wise up. It's like the banner advertising. Everybody ignores banner advertising. You see it on a website, you ignore it.
Yeah.
It no longer exists. I find when I search, anything that's on that right-hand side, anything that's Google AdWords or anything that comes up, I ignore it.
Yeah, well, we were part of the Google agency network. And what Google did 2 or 3 years ago is they had a representative contact us. It was very eerie to have someone from Google actually contact us and say, we want to add you to our agency network. We're doing over $1 million in pay-per-click for our clients. And so we started talking to Google, and it was a very nice account representative they set up for us, very intelligent person. And the more we worked with her, the more we saw, she was really trying to move us toward not only expanding our pay-per-click with clients, but also getting into their banner ad program. And with probably about a year after we made first contact, she left, and then we given another person's name, and then a few months later, the program just disappeared, and we've never heard from Google or anyone from Google again, and I don't know what they're doing with the agency program. So it didn't work. I'm not sure why it didn't work, but it probably has to do with this knowledge of pay-per-click, and so, you asked a question that was really good, is pay-per-click declining? And I would bet that maybe pay-per-click itself, as far as new people signing up, is growing because Google Analytics is free and it's part of that account. Right. But I think if they had a metric such as spend per customer or growth rate of spend per customer and acquisition of new customers, I bet those trends are flattening out. And of course, I don't have that data for Google. But the reason I say that is just because when we are in the marketplace doing what we do, there's just not a ton of excitement about it, and there's definitely not a lot of knowledge about how to run these ads.
Well, you bring up an awesome point as far as search, and especially with Facebook, because you bring up the whole social media sphere. And depending on which platform you're on, I mean, obviously, if you want to look at the major players, you've got YouTube, you've got Twitter, and you've got Facebook and LinkedIn. Those are pretty much the main players. Well, each platform has a different demographic and a different reason for using it. And people will log on to Twitter to find out who's having the conversations about what they're interested in, whether it be a conference, whether it be specific information, white papers that are being published. They can do a search in Twitter and find that specific information right there, go to a link, and then that link usually will take you to a blog.
Yeah.
And so you're off of Twitter now into somebody's blog getting information. And then from the blogs, you can bounce out. And blogging, I know we're going to talk about that in a future podcast and how that relates to your social media strategies. But I'm finding that blogs are becoming very, very important and influential, more so than what they used to be. But,
yeah, absolutely. And I think that Google has got to be kicking themselves that they missed Facebook. I mean, they easily could have been Google could have been Facebook or vice versa, but they missed it, and now it's too late.
And now you can do searches within Facebook, searches within YouTube if you're looking for a video on something specific, searches within LinkedIn for something specific, and searches within Twitter.
Yeah.
So depending on where your information hangs out, or wherever the people that have the information you're looking for hang out, you're going to tap one of those resources.
Yeah, and the idea that, and Google knows this, is that when you search in a social network, then you're getting information directly from consumers and from other people, as opposed to companies that have a bias and want to sell you something.
Well, let's bounce to the next one as far as growth in email and text messaging.
Right. Well, you probably think that, what does that mean, growth in email? Well, the way I'm thinking of this is that there's going to be many more niche markets and niche services using email as a primary marketing tool. And it's just amazing to me how many companies we run into and have discussions with that do not have an email marketing program at all. And if they do have one, it is totally ineffective. And that's going to change. Over time, it's going to change. Once again, we run into the same issue of what we did in with pay-per-click, although email marketing requires more time in some ways, and it requires strategy as well, because junk emails get deleted.
Well, so
the emails have to have good value and good content, and without a good strategy, you can't have good value in your content.
That brings up a perfect point. I ran across an email. I received an email this morning from a vendor that had a booth up at a show I attended last month in New Orleans. Now, I spent probably 45 minutes on the trade show floor. I didn't visit any booths. I had a program I was running, so I was on the trade show floor just specifically talking to colleagues. Didn't visit a single vendor. This email is probably the 60th email that I've received that said, "Thank you for visiting our booth. We want to keep in touch with you." And this adds to what you're talking about is effectiveness, because that's not effective. No. I did not visit their booth. Delete. Now, I realize that, I know they're trying to get their marketing message out, and somebody in the marketing department says, we have to follow up with all these people. Well, what essentially happened is they got the marketing list of everybody that attended the conference.
Well, and I think that ties into this idea of you got to segment your email list. You've got to know what it is people want, and the more niche you are, the better.
And it's got to be completely opt-in. It has to be something where, and this is something that we've been talking about in the meetings and conference industry. If you attend a conference for free, you're going to assume all of your attendance is paid by sponsors or by the exhibitors. Therefore, if you go for free, expect you're going to get email. Your email will be sold to those companies. That'll be part of the package. Yeah. However, if you pay to attend, it should only be opt-in, meaning if you give your business card to the booth person at the booth or they scan your badge, now you've given them permission to market to you.
Right.
And that should be the only time.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And the idea of email and text messaging demographically is also important to note. A lot of people still don't text or receive or send texts, and that's going to change, especially as more and more people use actually the smartphones as opposed to standard phones, and smartphones are growing tremendously.
There's a few fast food chains that do that. I remember walking in, I can't remember where it was Culver's or some fast food place, and it said text, this word to this number here, and you'll get something free. So you text the number,
and you set the
and then automatically it says here, and you get a free scoop of ice cream.
Well, I think that a big part, and I don't know if this will happen in 2011, but getting texted to remind you of appointments that you've made. Like, for example, you got to get a haircut, or you've got to take the car in, or whatever you're doing. A text reminder saying, "Hey, you've got the car appointment tomorrow. Don't forget." I think that you're going to see more of that, and I think that companies that do that over time will see more appointments kept and not missed, and that'll increase and improve their revenue.
So it'd be more like on the service sector then.
Yeah, and I think the service sector is important. I mean, you might be able to do some product notifications via text, but that, once again, it's got to be highly opt-in. I mean, don't ever do that unless it's totally opt-in. And my point here, though, is that you're going to see a tremendous amount of people start using text messaging, and more companies being more effective with their email marketing.
And what about mobile internet?
Well, mobile internet, I have two words: iPad. Maybe that's one word, but I have iPad to say, because iPad has changed the rules on mobile marketing, and there's several reasons for that. One is that the phones and the phone technology they're just too small for people that are influential in buying. I mean, I've had this saying that I've said for many years, and that is, people with money wear reading glasses. So people that are in their 40s and up, who have the bulk of the money in this country, they can't use the iPhone to buy stuff. The websites are too small and their fingers are too big. But the iPad is perfect. It's perfect on an airplane. It's perfect on a train. It's great when you're mobile because you connect right to the 3G network or whatever network. And that's just going to improve and get better. And you're going to see a ton of competitors to the iPad. They're already starting to come.
Samsung already has some devices out. I've seen some commercials for that.
Absolutely. Now, they're still a few years behind, but a friend of mine that I play tennis with works over here at a chip manufacturing company here in Colorado. And they are expanding like crazy. And I said, "Why are you expanding?" He goes, "Well, because of the iPad." I said, "Well, you do chips for the iPad?" He goes, "No, we do it for the competitors." Because with every product, there's always going to be people that don't want to be the iPad people. They want to be the alternative to the iPad. That's always going to exist. And maybe at some point, someone will come up with something better than the iPad. Now, just this week, we heard that I'm drawing a blank on the CEO for Apple.
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs, right? I was going to say Bill Gates. So Steve Jobs is having health problems, and I mean, this is a guy who had, I think he had his liver. He had his liver replaced, right? Yeah. So yeah, and he has been such a key driver behind all these things. So if he doesn't come back to Apple, who knows? In the next few years, a device could come out and take away that market share. But the bottom line is that your website and your marketing has to look good on these mobile devices. So because of that, you need to definitely go out and test and cross-platform test your website and everything else you're doing on your mobile devices, especially the iPad.
So what are some action items that our listeners can take from this podcast?
Well, there's a bunch of them, and we just stuck to 4 trends, but there's probably more that we could talk about. Number one is get an e-commerce strategy in place and do it sooner rather than later. Every day that you wait is a day you're missing, not only in sales but on SEO, because older websites just get better treatment in Google and so forth. So get an e-commerce strategy together, and the bottom line is, if you can sell online directly. So
strategy is the key, though. That's
Absolutely.
The whole thing, not set up an e-commerce account, set up a strategy.
A strategy, and get your e-commerce strategy implemented. Look at Magento as an e-commerce platform, and you can find out more about that at Magento Commerce, and just do a search on Magento on Google, and you'll see a lot of information there. Look at all options for driving traffic. Don't get so focused on Google that it's all you do is SEO and Google. Look at other sources for traffic. Look at social networking. Look at content distribution, and so forth.
Ads on Facebook, fan pages on Facebook.
Yeah, LinkedIn, and keep an eye out for new websites that emerge in 2011 in your niche markets that could do that. Also, develop an email marketing program. Don't wait anymore. Do that today. Have an opt-in box on your website. Start getting email addresses. Test your website on mobile devices. Definitely the iPad. If you don't have an iPad around the office in your company, you need to get one. It's worth the investment. You need to see how this thing works.
At the worst case scenario, go to the Apple Store and pull it up.
That's right. Go to the Apple Store and play with it. And then just I encourage everyone to stay active and current on web trends. And really, the faster you get on the ball with these things, the better you'll stay ahead of your competition. And what's going to happen in the next year or two is that the recession is going to turn around. So in all industries, we've had your competitors have been affected by this recession. There's many companies have gone out of business or have not given attention to their marketing during the downturn. They cut marketing dollars, right? Well, if you have the energy or the time, put it into this web marketing stuff, because when things turn around, you'll be ahead of your competitors, and I think your company will do a lot better. So take these trends and run with them, and I think you'll see success in 2011.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Tom. And folks, if you have any questions for us, any additional questions that you want to send us, shoot us an email over, and we'll make sure we get to those in our future podcasts. Thanks so much for joining us.
This has been an Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast. For more information and to see all the available podcasts and much more, visit intuitiveblog.com.